So this is quite unlike most of my videos. I usually do outdoor camping, traveling type videos. And today I'm going to be building a computer. So I've got a few things to say about that, but one thing though, first of all, you have to, if you decide to build your own computer, you really have to do a little bit of homework because you got to figure out what parts go together. So, you know, when you buy the three parts that really have to mesh together, there's three main ones, and basically all of them have to work together, but the three main ones that really need to work together, the processor, the RAM, and the motherboards. The processor I want to use, there's two basic processors, there's the AMD processors, and there's Intel processors. And so, you know, when I decide I want to build an Intel system, then when I'm looking for a motherboard, I'm looking for an Intel-based motherboard. So that's kind of what I got here is an Intel-based motherboard that I picked. I've already built one of these systems and it worked really well, so I'm sticking with these parts because then I got one system apiece for my wife and I, and so we have the identical systems, and it'll make it easier for everything. So basically what I did is I decided I wanted to go Intel, so I got an Intel. I decided to use an i7 processor. There's lots of flavors of those. You got to do a little research on that to figure out what you want to do and within your budget. And this one, in this case, it's an LGA 1700 socket. So you have to make sure your motherboard socket on your motherboard matches what your processor. And then when you decide which motherboard and processor to use, then when you buy RAM, you need to make sure that the RAM is going to be compatible. This is like generic RAM from Crucial. I don't overclock or anything, so I basically use this Crucial RAM in my computer, and it worked great. So that's why I'm sticking with that. You just need to do a little research, figure out what you want to do, and then figure out where your budget fits in, because you can spend a lot of money on these parts. And I've got kind of a low-end video card, but you can stay with the video card that comes on the motherboard. There's the Intel chipsets have their own onboard video that you could use that if you wanted to. But in my case, I like to have a discrete video card. So anyway, that's what we ended up going with. So anyway, I'll show you a little bit about the parts that I have. So here's the parts that I went with. This is this one on top is the video card. Again, it's not a high-end video card. It's kind of a low-end, but at any rate, so far it's worked pretty good for me. So this is the one I'm going with. Video cards are extremely expensive right now, and they're very overpriced. So that's why I kind of went with the low-end kind. I may upgrade it later on. Depends on if it works for me. That's what I'm going to stick with. This is the motherboard that I'm using on this particular build. It's got Wi-Fi built onto it, and I wanted that because we have Starlink here, and that way I can move computers around the house with Wi-Fi built in without having to put on a Wi-Fi card. So anyway, that's the motherboard. I'm putting in an SSD, boot drive SSD, which is an M.2 drive. The M.2 drives are extremely cool because they're so small. And back in the old days, you put a great big old motherboard, or a great big old disk drive in there, to put your operating system on, and now you can put it on this. This is a 1 terabyte drive, and so that makes it a lot easier a lot smaller and more compact, and these are very quick, very fast. So anyway, the one I'm using is the Samsung 980, SSD 980. So, and then the Crucial RAM, again, I matched that up with the motherboard. I went to Crucial, and they have a system you can run through there. Newegg does the same thing. You can actually go through and figure out what is compatible with the motherboard that you have. So you have to make sure those work together. Again, I showed you the i7. I've got the Intel i7 processor. A little pricey unit, if you ask me. I've got a water-cooled system here, so I decided with my first build, I decided to use this water-cooled system. This part goes on this processor. and this part goes in the front of the case. And so far, I'm pretty happy with the other one because it's got very low temperatures, which is, and I haven't really crunched any numbers with it yet, but I'm thinking it's going to work pretty good. My temperatures are still way low, and that's what I want to see. Okay, this case is from Antec, and you open up the front of it. It's got a grill on the front with some fans. All three fans are connected. It comes with an extra fan for the bottom. I didn't put that in my first build, and I'm not going to put it in this one either. But this radiator that goes with the water cool system bolts onto the back of that. I'll get to that. I actually put a optical drive in this, and I wasn't going to do that with these, but the optical drive is good because we have so many things on CD and DVD-ROM that we're probably better off with the optical drive. So I went ahead and put one in it. So this I've already put this in the case. So anyway, this is pretty cool. And I like this part of the case because it's padded here, and it really cuts the sound down when you close this thing. And I also like the way this thing opens up in the back. The two thumb screws, they don't even come all the way out. They stay on the side cover, and so it really makes it nice. And this thing's pretty spacious inside. It's not. There's some things I don't like about it, and one thing I don't like about it is where the power supply sits. It's got very hard to plug things in. What I did was I put this power supply in here. I've got a Corsair 750 watt power supply in there, and I pre-connected all of my wires that I know I'm going to need. So I pre-connected before I put this power supply in because they're so hard to get to. When you open up the other side, which I'll do in a second, you can see that you can't hardly put your fingers in there. This whole thing is in the way. So you really can't get in there to do anything. So it's very difficult. The other side, all this electronic stuff here is for the fans. It's fan control. And so, but you see, here's the power supply down here, and it's really hard to, if I wanted to plug more wires in, you can get the ones on the outside, but the ones way back in here you can't hardly get to. They're very difficult. So you have to almost take there's 4 screws that hold the power supply in. You pull that out. Actually, it comes out this way. And then you hook it up, put it back in. And so I happen to know what I needed as far as wires go. So it was real easy for me to just go ahead and connect everything up now, and then I'm good. And I also put in a hard drive down in here for storage, and this is the SATA hard drive, 4 terabyte drive, Western Digital. I'm a Western Digital guy. That's what I like, and that's what's always worked for me. So I like Western Digital. So at any rate, there's a Western Digital drive in here, and this is pretty easy to get in and out. I've got this connected right now, but goes in a little tray like that, and so when you put it in, it just slides right in, snaps in, which makes it real easy to move them around. And then this is a power supply here, so you got to have power supply. And then I'll have a SATA cord that'll go from the hard drive to the motherboard. Okay, now there's a few tools you're going to need. Phillips screwdriver is pretty much the standard. Almost everything's Phillips screwdrivers. You won't find any Torx or anything like that on any of this stuff. So, I haven't even opened this up yet. That's quite unlike me. Now the motherboard will come with pretty much everything you need as far as wiring goes, and documentation, and anti-static bag, of course. Everything will be in the box. It comes with a driver disk, which I don't use. I usually go to their website and download the newest drivers because I'm not so sure those are the newest drivers. So, Anyway, I don't normally use these. I used to use these all the time, but nowadays it's easier to download the drivers ahead of time and put them on a thumb drive, which is what I have, and then I'll just install them from there. Because when you get the motherboard, when you get the system up going, then there's chipset drivers that make the motherboard talk to its parts together, and so there's lots of things you need to. There's lots of drivers that need to be installed. These are SATA cords that go to like between the motherboard and the hard drive, or the motherboard and the optical drive. These are the data cables that go. They come with it. This came with 2. So, and then the documentation that they give you is the motherboard manual is like this is your Bible for putting it together, because first of all you'll need to refer to the layout of the board so you can figure out where all the connectors are and which ones you'll need. So the documentation on the old Asus motherboards, I'm very Asus oriented, but the documentation on the older Asus motherboards was way thicker than this, had a lot more information in it than this one does. But this actually, as I found out with my first build, had adequate amount of information to get it done. A few other things that come with it: some standoffs, some screws that you may or may not need, little pads I didn't use in the first one. This thing you'll need for sure. Anyway, so there's the motherboard. Now with any computer build, the very first thing you're going to do, the very first thing I've done, now I'm no expert at this. I've built quite a few computers, and every time I build one, the technology has changed from the last one. So all the things I learned on the first one don't apply to the next one. So then that's the case with this technology. It depends on how often you do this. Now in my case, my last computer I built in 2015, so this is 2022 right now, so that's 7 years ago. So, and that's pretty old for computer years. So there's some things on this new motherboard that, like the M.2 drive. They didn't have those. They had M.2 on my last one, but I didn't know much about it, so I used a regular standard hard drive for my operating system. And so on this one, M.2 is the way to go, and that's what we're doing. So what I like to do with the motherboard, once I get it out of the anti-static bag, and this is another thing that Asus used to really be good at, is they would give you a piece of foam that you could set this thing on while you're working on it. And they don't do that anymore, and which I was surprised and dissatisfied with, if you will, because I didn't really want, I like to be able to set it on something while I'm pressing down on it, because we're going to be putting the processor on and the RAM before you put it in the case. So, and you have to, with the RAM especially, you have to kind of push down on the RAM to get it seated. And so, if you have something underneath it to pad it, it's just better that way. Okay, so the first thing I usually do is put on the processor. These processors have a little plastic cover here that has to come off. So you have to, there's a clip right here, and it pulls off to one side and snaps your finger. Pulls off to one side and then unclips. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then this thing will lift up, and then you'll have to pop this plastic out of here, because this doesn't go with it. So that piece of plastic has to go. Now, when you put the processor in, the processor is going to sit right in there. And when you put the processor in, it only goes one way. Back in the old days, you could get them, they had little pins on them, and they were very difficult to, there was one system I built that actually came with bent pins, and I almost sent it back. But I ended up taking a credit card and actually was able to straighten the pins out and make it work. So sending it back, that just slows everything down. So, but when you're putting these processors in, there's some little pins, there's some little marks. And they've taken a lot of the guesswork out of these things. These are very, what I found my last one was very user-friendly when it comes to figuring out how it goes on. So this processor has little indentations. I don't know if you can see that. There's little cutout things. There's a 2 there, and there's 2 here. And if you try to put it in the wrong way, they won't match up. So when you put it in, you just make sure they match up, which that one doesn't. So obviously it goes this way. And then it just drops right in the socket. So the little indentations on either side of the chip that you can see here have to line up. Like I say, back in the old days, you could get them backwards. These particular ones seem to be very user-friendly, I think. So anyway, that's pretty much all there is to putting the processor on. And then what you want to do is clamp it back down without snapping it against your finger. And then the processor is installed. Now, when we get ready to put the heatsink on, which we won't, I mean the cooler on, it'll go on top, right on top of it'll go around top of the chip here, and we'll have to use a thermal grease on it, a little drop of thermal grease to make it connect. So the other thing I do is when it's out of the box is I'll install the RAM, and the RAM has to go. There's 4 slots for RAM here, and they're color coded. There's 2 black ones and 2 gray ones, and those are and if you're going to use 4, you're going to use 2. I'm using 2 sticks of RAM. They're in pairs. These DDR4 RAM sticks they go in pairs. So when we install these, they'll go in the color codes. So the 2, I'll put a chip in each black. And if I was going to use 4, then it wouldn't really matter too much, especially if they were all the same. But with only 2, you're just going to stay with the colors. So, and that's what I'm going to do there. The very first time I built a computer, I was amazed at how much effort it took to get the RAM to seat. They just said to put the RAM in there and push down on it and it snaps right in. Well, it didn't snap right in at all, and it was disconcerting to me because I didn't know anything about what I was doing. So, I was pushing down so hard, I was afraid something was going to break, and that's one of the reasons I like to put something under this thing. Anyway, when you put the RAM in here, you'll see it's got a keyway here, and it has to line up with the keyway in the slot that you're putting it in. So you got to make sure, because if I put it this way, they won't line up. The slot's way over here, and the key's back over here, which you probably can't see. Anyway, so when you put this thing in here, you want to just put it in, get it in the right slot. Now, when you put it in here, there's little clips on this side. You'll push this down until the clip snaps. Okay, it just snaps shut. As soon as it does that, then you know it's seated. So we'll do the same thing with the other chip. When you're handling these RAM chips, you really don't want to handle the gold contacts there. You want to make sure that those are clean. Okay, both of those are snapped in. Push them down in there. Okay. Now, at this point is usually when I used to put on the heatsink, but since I'm using a water-cooled heatsink, they say to put it on afterwards. So the only other thing I'm going to do with it right now, because it's the easiest way to do it, is put the M.2 boot drive in, which is a real simple process. Just needs and I'm going to take all this stuff off here. They got some stickers here that have to be removed. Goes right under here. Now, the drive itself, the screw, the socket's right here, and the screw is going to, there's going to be a screw that's going to hold it down right here. Now this takes a longer, you can buy a longer one, I guess bigger capacity, I don't know, I'm not sure why, but anyway. All it does is stick right in there like that, and then this goes down, and then you turn this thing one way or the other until it locks it in. That's pretty much all there is to do for the boot drive. And then you put the heatsink back on it, which has a thing that you have to remove, plastic thing. Just peel this off. This just peels off like that. And then goes back on. Oop. All you do is just screw these down until they're snug. And that's about the end of that. You have to make sure that all the standoffs are underneath the places where there's supposed to be a screw. Like I say, there's 9 screws, so you have to make sure that the 9 standoffs in there are in the right spot. And back in the old days, you put the standoffs in wherever you needed to. And when I did this before, I found out that this Antec case, all the standoffs were in the right spot already. With the new cooler, the new cooling system, I say new because it's new to me, there is a special plate that needs to go. Okay, the LGA 1700 has a special, there's all this other stuff that comes with it that we won't use. But anyway, this is it's labeled LGA 1700. This is the one we're going to use. So we're going to put this on there. It goes on behind the goes on behind the motherboard and sticks up through it. And once I get it on there right, then there's these little things that go with it. And those screw down like this and it holds it in place. So these things, all they do is hold that backing plate on there, and the backing plate keeps is how the heat sink, the heat sink that comes with the cooler has to bolt down, has to be a tight fit on the processor, right against the processor. And so that's what this backing plate does, is it holds everything against the processor nice and tight. Okay, now here's the inside of the case. Now there's 9 standoffs here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 3 more down along the bottom. So there's 9 standoffs, and you just need to make sure that those standoffs are in the spots they need to be when you stick this motherboard in here, so that they're right where the screws are supposed to connect. Now I've already put the optical drive in here, and there it is in the back. And I connected up the power wire. That's this thing right here. I connected that up, but I haven't connected the SATA cable up yet that connects up right here because it's going to go to the motherboard, so I didn't want to confuse things here. Too bad. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and set this thing in place, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, now at this point, I've got the motherboard in there, put the case back up. Again, your motherboard box, or the case will come with all the screws you need. I had a little trouble finding mine, so anyway, I got enough screws to get it in there. Now, this is where you're going to need to. There's a couple of ways to go from here. Right now, I'm going to put I'm going to connect the cooler on here. Actually, no, I'm not either. I'm going to go ahead and run some SATA wires. The SATA connectors are right over here on the side. This is where you need to this is where you need to look at your motherboard manual and figure out where everything is on here, and then where your connectors are for power and all that other stuff. There's power connectors up here that need to be connected. There's a power connector here that needs to be connected. There's a SATA connectors that'll be over here somewhere. Oh, right down here, I think. I have to look at the book again. Again, I'm not an expert at any of this. This is what I just do to. I have to refer to the book and make sure that I know what is connected to where and how it's connected. And then the video card's going to go right in here, and then I'm going to run some wires first before I put this on here, because it might make it easier if I go ahead and do that. So this is what you really need to follow the book. You know, on the motherboard manual will have all the things that you need to connect up, and that will get you in the right ballpark. The proof of the pudding is once you get everything connected and you turn it on, that it works. That's really the proof of the pudding. So you're going to need to work on that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect up all the stuff I got to connect up that get off camera here, so I can connect up this stuff. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So this is the final connected up stuff. This is the radiator there, the water cooled system, and there's the CPU is connected up right up in here. The ATX power supply connects right over in there. So the front panel connectors are really hard to get your fingers on, so yeah, you got to use they're really hard to get on there. There's an audio connector over here that needs to go up, and so basically I'm not too good with my wire management, but you know, I've got everything in here, and you know, since the case is going to be closed up, I'm not too worried about making it pretty. So anyway, that's what it looks like when it's done. Well, when I got it fired up, turned on the monitor, turned on the power, waiting for it to do something. I was just holding my breath here, because this is the make it or break it time. What you want to see is the BIOS screen come up. So there is the BIOS screen. So that's exactly what you want to see. So as soon as you see that, you know you succeeded. Well, after I got that done, it fired right up, went through the BIOS, and then I had to install the operating system, which I had on a thumb drive. And once you install the operating system, then you've got drivers to install, and you've got updates to do in Windows, and then sometimes you'll need to go and initialize or activate Windows. That one was activated automatically. I had a little trouble with mine when I built mine, but at any rate, everything was good. It took a little while to get all the drivers installed, but it was all good, and I was very happy with the outcome.